when you have the moon moving, it normally changes signs every 2 to 3 days. So on average, 2.5 days. It's in Libra right now. And when a moon is void, it means that between the time that it is in Libra going to the next sign, Scorpio, it's not aspecting any other planets. So it's not conjoining, squaring, sextiling. It's basically having no contact with any of the other planets based on where they're distributed in the chart. And you can have a moon changing signs where that doesn't happen. There is no void, or the void is 1 minute. And in this case, it's an especially long void, which is indicating something about where the rest of the planets are situated. And as an example, we already know that over the next few days, we're going to have some planets changing signs. And likely that is why, because of all of this movement over the next week, the moon just happens to be moving through this pocket where it is not by degree connecting with any of the other planets. So yes, thank you. Thank you for raising that. Very interesting. Returns are only for the planet itself. So if you had Neptune in Aries, which is not possible for anybody on this call, if you had Neptune in Aries and then Neptune was going into Aries, then that would be a return. So if Jupiter just happens to be there, Neptune going into Aries has no bearing. Neptune going back into Pisces has no bearing. They're different planets with different energies to them. They can interact with each other, especially if what would happen is if they get close enough, then you have a conjunction. But returns are just for the planet itself. Hey, Summer. Yeah, if you're curious to understand more about relationship compatibility, I do have a reading offering on my website, synastry readings. So those have to do with relationships. And I'll just say on the high level, it's not just based on your sun sign. So you wouldn't fully be dictating, oh, well, I'm a Libra sun and my partner is a Taurus sun. Does that mean we're compatible? When you look at compatibility broadly in astrology, it's nice to know the sun sign, but really you want to look at each of the other planets because they give you other layers of the relationship. So if you are interested in that, I did just open that up as an offering. Well, we have 16 years of conflict, so now 6 years of conflict. Or is this time period, will it facilitate a leap forward for all, depending on which house Gemini is in your chart, like a phoenix burned to the ground? Yes. So I will distinguish here, love, that Pluto is more of the burn it to the ground and be reborn. Pluto has the big transformation energy, and that's already been in progress. That is in the Aquarius area of your chart, which is systems. So we already are in a rebuilding for the collective, which is lasting 20 years, and that started in November. So that's already ongoing. What's happening with Neptune of conflict, innovation in the health and spiritual spaces, which is, there's the positive, there's always a positive side. That is also happening at the same time. So we're having an energy that wants us to, that's less about rebuilding systems. It's evaluating what we have going on and wanting to start over. Slightly different. For Uranus in Gemini, it's also conflict in that we want to create new systems. So we have a death and rebirth with Pluto. We have a innovating with Neptune and Aries. And then for Uranus, we have innovating new systems. So as you can see, all three of them are very similar, and it's because of where these planets happen to be, the signs that they happen to be in. The stories are overlapping, where normally they would feel more cleanly distinguished from one another. That's why it feels like we're just getting versions of the same exact thing, like piled on top of us, and it will be a little bit harder to parse out. Other than, as an example, anything that happened between November 15th, I believe, and March 30th, we can say that's Pluto, because all these other planets were unchanged. They were all in the same place that they've been for over a decade. Now we're in a really messy time where all of these planets are changing and retrograding, and they're all in new areas. And so it's not going to be clearer until they've been settled for a little bit to know what can be attributed where. But yes, innovation and change for the collective, for everyone, and then also in looking at your chart. Where are you being called to make change? That is dictated by what you have in Gemini. So Jupiter was retrograde when I was born, so that has a different effect, right? Yes. So if you are looking at a planet and it is retrograde in your birth chart, it does carry characteristics around like what that could mean for the expression of it. So wherever it is in your life, it could mean that you have some challenges with growth in that house area, in that house sign, because it was retrograde. And I had something similar. I think I might have also had Jupiter retrograde in my chart too. I always forget because I forget to look at my own chart, but I'm pretty sure it was also retrograde for me. So it's like it's an area where you're being asked to grow, but like there's some resistance with it, or you have roadblocks that you run into where it's a little bit harder to do that. That is different than when you have a planet that happens, in this example, Jupiter, that happens to be retrograding. That is saying, hey, we're applying healing to this area of your chart. We're looking at ways that we are growing, or maybe the blocks that we have, and we're trying to adjust so then when it moves forward again, we can expand, grow, and have wisdom. Versus in your natal chart, it's kind of like applied to you as a pattern through life. A couple great questions here. 1, signs do not retrograde. Signs are signs. They are constellations that are just there. They are the energies that the planets move through. When a planet stations retrograde, it's talking about the degree point. So in the case of Saturn stationing retrograde at 1 degree of Aries, it's the degree point where it starts. The period following that is while it is retrograding. It is in retrograde. And then the end point is when it stations direct. So the retrograding is over. So the stationing is the part when it slows down the planet movement. Again, this is just by visual, but it appears to us on Earth, even though that's not what's really happening, it appears to us that it is slowing down its progress in the sky, and that it stops and it pauses for a little bit, and then that it is backing up. And then it slows down as it prepares to station direct again, and then it starts moving direct. And then you exit the shadow period, and then you are just direct motion. So even though I've, quote, been on a vacation because Saturn has not been in my natal sign of Pisces, where Saturn is, I am in a Saturn-ruled profection year. So it's kind of my business to know what Saturn is doing throughout this year, throughout last year too. If you are not familiar with what profection years are, I also did a workshop on that on Insight Timer, and I have like a nice little tricked out video with some visuals on it. That's also available on my YouTube. It's a really helpful ancient timing technique to understand your year ahead in the context of your birthday. What are the themes that are emerging for you? What is the planet that's ruling it? So it can give you not just what's your natural chart ruler, but what is ruling your year, because then you can just watch that planet. So when we have these talks, I'm saying, oh, Saturn is doing this, Venus is doing that, blah, blah, blah. And for you, you might be in a Mars-ruled year. So it's very interesting and important to know what's happening in these other areas, but it's really crucial to know what Mars is up to. So it's another layer that you can add on. So if you're curious to learn more about that, again, you can watch a YouTube video. I have it in a blog post embedded on my website as well. And then I have a Profection Year guide that you can get that's fully comprehensive that you can use literally every year of life. So unless I update it at some point and have a 2.0, it tells you everything about every chart, every placement that you'd need. So that is also on my website too. But if you just want to watch the video to kind of understand the concept of it, you can watch that YouTube video. If Mercury is your ruler of your chart, does it make a difference in the Mercury retrograde period? Is it more intense? Great question, love. If Mercury is your chart ruler, then it depends. It depends on if Mercury was retrograde when you were born. So you'll be able to see that in your chart if it has a little R next to it. So love, if, as an example, you were born and Mercury was not retrograde, then I would say the answer is yes. It will definitely feel more intense because what Mercury is doing is important. And when it is retrograde, it's likely that each of the retrogrades that happen, on average, there's 3 a year, that you're especially thrown for a loop. That being said, there could be mitigating factors. I mentioned with an example earlier, I think Jamie had Venus moving through her 3rd house. It's like, okay, well, that could be supportive. Maybe that mitigates a little bit of the communication dysfunction that's going to happen wherever Mercury is, as an example. So we don't want to view it fully in a vacuum, but typically, and I know people who have Mercury as a ruler of their chart, they tend to really feel wiped out and out of it during Mercury retrogrades. If in your natal chart you were born under a Mercury retrograde, you may feel awesome. You may be completely unfazed. It's like a power up. You like look forward to the Mercury retrogrades because everyone else is running around with their head cut off and you're like, I've never felt so clear. Or maybe you still run into issues, but your tolerance for it is so much higher that it doesn't phase you as much as it might phase somebody else. So those are, you want to consider whether it was retrograde or not in your natal chart, and then how it is your ruler or if it is not your ruler, and then what else is happening in the sky. You could be some version of, I wouldn't say you'd be a mess, but you wouldn't be as, it depends. It depends on where it is natally, because let's say as an example, you were born with a retrograde Mercury in Virgo. When Mercury enters Virgo, then you're having a Virgo return, whether there is a retrograde there or not. And when you have a return, usually that is supportive. So to just say, oh, it means that Mercury is not going to function properly, not true. But that's why there's so many mitigating factors, because you have to look at what else is going on everywhere else in the chart and the areas of your life that are being impacted. Are any other planets aspecting Mercury and kind of throwing it off balance? Is it aspecting Jupiter? Is it aspecting Mercury, Sun, Moon? Anything that is going to be supportive of it. That being said, just because it's aspecting Jupiter doesn't mean that it's automatically positive, because it could be that Jupiter is amplifying, expanding something that's dysfunctional with how you're thinking or what's happening with communication or travel or yada yada. So it's definitely multifaceted. It's more that when you have a natal retrograde and a retrograde happens, you just might feel it less than other people, or you may be supercharged. Depends on the person, depends on the specific transit and what's going on in the sky. So what I'm talking about with these transits is I'm essentially explaining what's happening, not even in today's chart, because I'm talking about the 31st. So I'm explaining, hey, in 10 days from when we're recording this, this is where Mercury is going to be. So I'm forecasting it. And then it allows you to look, essentially overlap that current chart, but for 10 days from now, on top of your chart by just looking at the degree point in your natal chart.